everyone joining us today for the second session, which we are calling Getting Down to Action, Implementing the Eco-Niwas Samhita. Again, this session is going to have 3 segments to it. The first, where we'll have a presentation around the framework for ENS implementation. This will be followed by a panel discussion, after which we'll have a short Q&A round for the audience. So I deem it my great privilege to now start introducing our panelists. I have this strong conviction that our panel today needs no introduction, but however, we have amongst us Shri Saurabh Didi. He's working as the director at the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and he's in charge and looking after the energy efficiency in the buildings and the transport sector. We also have amongst us Mr. Sanjay Seth. He's the senior director with TERI. He's also the Chief Executive Officer of the Griha Council and brings to the table almost 28 years of experience. Mr. Sanjay Seth will be moderating our session today, and very soon we'll also be seeing Dr. Uma Maheshwaran on the stage. He's there? Oh, sorry. I think I was too busy engaging with the audience. So sorry. So we also have amongst us Dr. Uma Maheshwaran Rajashekhar. He's the senior advisor to NIUA and the Smart Cities Mission in India. Holds over 18 years of experience in developing risk reduction strategies, climate change analysis, institutional strengthening, and so on. So it's great to have this panel. I'm going to give the stage to Mr. Sanjay Seth. So, yes. You can please start moderating the session. Thank you.
Wasn't the presentation coming first?
All right. Oh, yes. Can I have Shatakshi to please come and start presenting?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Arzu Kumari. So, today we are going to talk about the implementation framework of ENS. I believe everyone present here is already aware about Eco-Niwas Samhita, also popularly known as ENS, the Residential Energy Conservation Code developed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency with an intent to reduce the energy intensity and enhance thermal comfort in the residential building of India. The Bureau has recently also launched the Part 2 of the code, which covers the compliance method of the electromechanical component. So, in this session, as I said, the focus of our discussion will be around the ENS implementation. The climate change has been catalyzation and industrialization. As of recent data, 68% of world's total population is living in urban area, which will only increase. India is also following the same trend, and as per estimates, the urbanization rate of the country is projected to be 40% by 2030, which will further increase to 50% by 2050. Aspirations for better livings and enhanced buying potential has been widely linked with the increased demand for space cooling globally. As a matter of fact, the global stock of AC is projected to soar to 5.6 billion by 2050. The increasing demand of these energy-intensive appliances are a matter of concern. Why? Because almost 20% of the total energy consumption in the building is for space cooling globally. As per estimates, the residential sector in India is expected to consume about 39% of the total energy demand by 2047. So looking at these facts and figures, we all understand that there is a need to reduce energy consumption in residential buildings. At present, the construction industry is not regulated to ensure the minimum energy efficiency standards in the residential build stock, which attributes to the increasing energy intensity and demand for space cooling. The compliance of Part 1 of the code can alone ensure up to 20% energy saving as compared to a typical building. Further, the code provides provision for improved access to enhanced thermal comfort and daylighting. Moreover, how can we not talk about talk about India's recent pledge to become net zero by 2070? Energy conservation is low-hanging fruit for us and can pave our pathway towards the net zero target. Taking forward our learnings from Ecbc implementation, now that we talk about the residential building sector, which comparatively is humongous, its implementation process is going to be potentially challenging. As the code was not developed under the purview of any existing act or regulation, the states will need a clear direction on possible methods to mandate the code for applicable residential buildings. The other foreseen challenges are limited awareness and technical capacity, absence of defined implementation mechanism, lean administrative capacity, market demand and supply chain constraints, compromise to ease of doing business. Now, to deal with these challenges, the Bureau has taken several initiatives. In addition to the Eco-Niwas Samhita Part 1, Part 2 of the code was also launched in 2021. There is Eco-Niwas Samhita analytical tool and the compliance tool as well. We have star labeling for energy efficient homes. We also have online tool for building material directory and handbook for replicable designs for energy efficient residential buildings. Apart from these, there are initiatives like Nirman Awards for encouraging the exceptional building designs. We also have training programs and course for master trainers, online tools for envelope optimization and performance analysis. Now, my colleague Satakshi Suman will take the discussion forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. So here we are. I think we are all very familiar with the code implementation process. I think ECBC has taught us that. For ENS, we have completed the code formulation of both Part 1 and Part 2. It's time for us to take forward the adoption, enforcement, and compliance as our next step. We tried identifying the probable routes for ENS adoption, where the first option is definitely seeking the Energy Conservation Act route, where the Act can be amended to provide a legal framework for notification, enforcement, and compliance of ENS in the states. The other option is its inclusion in the Municipal Act or provision in the model building bylaws and URD-PFI guidelines. We can also look at the option of enforcement through environmental impact assessment of 2006 or its inclusion of ENS in the requirements of RERA. Government can lead by example by focusing on thermal comfort and energy efficiency in Smart Cities Mission PMAY through compliances of ENS. Moving on to the enforcement and compliance of the code, we work towards devising indicative models for our deliberation in the session. The first and probably the simplest is to bring into effect a self-declaration model where the project architect is upskilled and empowered to sign a declaration of ENS compliance for the applicable projects. The compliance declaration will be submitted to the ULB, who upon its receipt will provide a provisional approval for construction commencement and later award compliance certificate upon construction completion as per ENS compliance, along with the occupancy certificate. The ULB can also have random compliance check to verify compliances. The second option is mandatory compliance for all, which has been derived from the ECBC rules of 2018. Here, the building owner hires the services of the project architect or ENS expert as applicable to submit compliance forms and evidence documents at different stages of the project construction towards ENS compliance. These forms and documents will be scrutinized and verified by authority having jurisdiction, which can be ULB or SDA in this case. Once the compliance is verified at different stages through scrutiny of the submitted documents, and the final certificate of compliance may be awarded to the building. The third option is category-wise stringency. In this model, we will be segregating the smaller projects, smaller and the larger projects based on either the housing category, project value, or the total build-up cost. Here, the smaller projects can follow the self-declaration model, and the larger ones can have the detailed mandatory compliance check. This model has been derived from the inference of a report substantiating the scope of ENS, which highlights that though 80% of the residential plots get exempted from the scope of ENS, it still captures approximately 90% of the residential floor area, majorly contributed by group housing. Hence, the impact of code can be captured significantly by teething the larger projects. The fourth and the last compliance option is mandatory envelope compliance. Through this model, we try to split the compliance of ENS between Part 1 and Part 2 of the code, where we look at integrating the envelope compliance in the building approval process that gets scrutinized and verified, like the existing bylaws and the compliance to the building envelope is certified by the ULB on construction completion. Part 2 of the code that includes the electromechanical compliance can have a self-declaration model that gets provisionally approved by the ULB. These components can later be monitored by a separate program like the residential labeling scheme. To summarize the four models that we have discussed now, we'll just discuss the pros and cons of all these models. For the self-declaration model, the pros are that minimum administrative capacity requirement, compliance declaration by project architect, so no additional expert is required, ease of doing business is there. The con is that it dilutes the compliance stringency. Mandatory compliance for all, the pros are considerable administrative capacity is required, difficult to verify countouts. Sorry, these are the cons, and it's a complicated process, compromised ease of doing business, and exponential quantum of verification process compared to the commercial segment. The third option, which is the category-wise stringency, the pros are medium administrative capacity for compliance verification. It's a self-paced and adaptable model. It can teach significant floor space area with low administrative capacity. The cons are, if not strategically implemented, might be difficult to move as per the timeline in a phased manner. The last model, which is the mandatory envelope compliance, the pros are that it's easily integrated with the building approval process. It's a streamlined process at ULB level, and ease of doing business is maintained. The con is that alternate path for electromechanical component verification needs to be there. With that, I end the presentation, and the floor is open for panel discussion. Over to you.
So thank you for setting the context. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to each one of you. It's good to see so many people in the room after a very long time, and probably this is one of the first events, and I'm sure that you've heard this many times in the first half as well. I think after the lockdowns, good to be back once again into physical settings. All of us, I think the people on the panel here have some way or the other, I think largely connected with compliance and regulations, implementation frameworks around the subject that we are discussing on the building codes, and especially when it comes down to the residential sector. I'm glad that this entire theme has been created to see. I think the backbone of the theme is providing thermal comforts for all, and that's where the SHEETAL project also is aligned to, and the consortium partners, TERI, IEEE and CEW are all aligned together for a very effective outcome of the collaborative efforts. I have with me sitting on my extreme right and extreme left, two people who are very strongly engaged to make sure that these building codes that have been developed by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency finally see getting implemented at the grassroots levels. Saurabh Didi, of course, who's leading the program on buildings in B, and Uma, who's with the National Institute of Urban Affairs, implementing the Smart Cities program and various portals and tools that have been developed under the Smart Cities initiative. And I think they become very, very important people on the dais. Not to say that Satish, who's on my next to me, is, the reason why I'm making him sit next to me is because he's very dear to me. I mean, we all started off our journey together when building codes were introduced and when I was a part of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and I think we all had good times together, other than doing the building codes. What I would do is probably ask, to begin with, maybe Saurabh, if I can ask you to give you your insights as to what you think are the biggest challenges and the opportunities in terms of, if you talk about the implementation frameworks. And I think they are very, very, the backbone for any policy to be really successful. So your thoughts, and then.
Thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. And after long time, I am in this setup. So I don't know how to speak in front of the audience. Normally, we are speaking in front of wall. So now, look, when we talk about ENS, there is a significant opportunity because ENS code is very simple. And what the major thing which we heard for ECBC is that it is very complicated code. But that cannot be simplified because of n number of reasons. But when we developed this code, ENS, we ensured that this code will be limited to 10 pages, and which part 1 was actually 9 pages or 8 pages document. Remaining is annexures. Remaining are annexures. Now, if we look at how scale would be, and there is an opportunity that 3 billion square meter residential area is going to be added for residential, then PMAY is being implemented. So number of things are going to be implemented, and if we will implement this code as it was presented, 20% of energy can be saved very easily. And I'll say even much more than that we can save. Now, but problem lies with the enforcement, that how we are going to enforce this code. And it was beautifully articulated by Shatakshi that 4 options can be used. Now, number 1 option, and you can correct me if I am saying something wrong in the options, but number 1 option is like our star rating program, that self-certified. And I think when star rating can work, this can also work. That's a beautiful option, I'll say. And if it is implemented, then things will move very fast. Second option is like ECBC, that we will make it mandatory. Every home will be verified at number of stages. And then there will be opportunity for architects, for the verifiers, that they have to do all those verifications and all. But if we can do a simplified, and I can't remember 3rd and 4th option exactly, but if we can simplify that, how we can have both the features, that it should have compliance as well, and also self-certification, that you can hire one energy auditor or whatever person who will do, and they will verify and give certificate, and whenever you are submitting those documents to authorities, that can work. So maybe it will increase compliance cost, but again, there will be more reliability. And then those third-party verifiers can be checked. And similar thing we are planning for ECBC as well. So those things can happen in enforcement. Now, but as this is state to state subject, it has to be implemented according to the state regulations, state requirements, and every state can do actually in a different manner as well. But ECBC by third-party verifier is beautifully working in Andhra, Telangana, that people are verifying those buildings and they are getting awarded, that compliance certificates are being awarded. So that way it will work more, I think.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Uma, if I may kind of come to you, as a part of the CSAF, if you see the smart, the assessment framework that you put together for smart cities, one of the elements there, if I really remember, is that how people have to kind of showcase, the various cities and municipalities have to showcase their compliance to building codes and other regulations. What's your take? I mean, how is it really, since I think you've already assessed the first lot, how have you seen the performance in terms of their compliances or commitments that they've made?
Thank you, Sanjay ji. It's a pleasure being here and pleasure being part of this particular panel, because I think building codes and energy efficiency has been something which has been very dear to me. And since I've been working in urban heat, uh, which was my research topic during my PhD, I think since then, how do you internalize it is a key thing. And the recent climate smart city assessment framework, the results, what it has indicated is, even though all the states have some kind of a green building cell existing right now, which is a good thing. Even the union territories have them as of. But when you look at the cities, there are only 88 cities which has or which can report at least one green building within there. And 88 seems like a big number, but out of the 88, only 35 to 36 of them have more number of buildings. The others have so little that they become insignificant. But the good thing is they have started implementing them. So when we are talking about cities taking up the challenge of enforcing building codes and regulation, we should just reflect back on our learnings. You know, in 2000, if I remember, Tamil Nadu government came up with this rainwater harvesting. They mandated it, they pushed, they made sure all the buildings implemented it. And all the buildings did implement, all the new buildings, existing buildings were also forced to do that. And it was very cheap, 2 lakh or something like that, 1 lakh, 1 to 2 lakh. So pretty much most buildings did implement it. But what really happened was nobody maintained it. Going down the line, right now, many states and many cities are also asking for rainwater harvesting, but how do you go and check annually? Because houses are like that. If you go to Delhi, South Delhi, that's what people do. They make modifications. They stay there for 2 years. When they buy the property, they make modifications. And when we talk about ECBC and all the 4 options which were indicated, all the 4 options are amazing and they are needed. And like what Saurabhji did indicate, every state should pick and choose what they want to do, or every city should have the freedom to pick and choose. This is a model which I'm going to implement, because you need a champion. And you can't really tell a champion that, do something what I'm proposing. You should give them an option, and you should let them do a mix and match what works for them, given the demography and given their, aspirations and so on and so forth, and let them pick and choose what they want to implement. But there are good things which can be done. Ultimately, the home, owners, the buyers should be sensitive. If they are not sensitive, they are not going to demand. Because right now, everybody goes and asks, do you have a parking? Why? Because they know it makes a difference. They can't no longer park the car outside. We need to sensitize people at large, probably like what Namami Gange, right now, we are doing some event with Namami Gange, and why water is important. There are different campaigns which have been rolled out. Probably looking at it, all these 4 things, I'm not denying these things are less important, but ultimately, homeowners, if you have an app where you can, before buying a house, why don't you check these 4 options? And if these 4 options are there, or these 10 options are there, you're going to save energy over your 30-year span. This is what you're going to save. And I think that is going to push a lot, because right now what you have is millennials buying houses. You have a good demography, which is very, very comfortable using apps, using phones. Even aged people do use phones, but the people who are going to buy these 20% of these new urban settlers, they are not going to be people beyond 40. They are going to be people between 20 to 40. So do think out of the box. And I think we keep talking about COVID, but 2 things, CSEF, what it has taught us. I think one thing CSEF taught us, and one which is my general observation, is digital reach, outreach. We were able to reach out to 126 cities at minimal cost. We probably spent around 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. And we were able to reach out to 126 cities. And you have that option right now because people are used to it. Over the last 2 years, people have been looking at their screen, but at least now they know they have an option. If they don't want to travel, they have an option to quickly meet for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so you can connect with the city administrators at a large scale. Very easily. I think earlier we used to do it over the phone call, but you can call them over the video, so there is a connect, a bit of connect. Of course, it is not as good as meeting them in person, but the option exists. The second thing, if you go all across all the buildings, including the IHC, thermal scanners are there. People have bought it. So what they are going to do with the thermal scanner after 1 year? Use it for the buildings, use it for energy efficiency. So you don't need, these people from municipal corporation coming and giving you a bill or a thing. Talk about what is the carrot? Where is that incentive, within the model? If you can showcase that incentive to people, and you can make it easier for them to verify it themselves, and of course scanners are available, and they will be more than interested making use of it for multiple purposes. Of course, the COVID thing has brought that advantage. So there are a couple of advantages, and there are a couple of learnings which we have, and of course we need to understand what Saurabh did mention. Cities are state subjects. Whatever we do at the national government, we cannot mandate a city to do anything. We can give guidelines, but it is the city's choice to follow the guidelines or not. We can put bylaws or model bylaws, but it's not, it's very difficult to force them to do it, and we should not, because India is diversified. We should give freedom, and many times they say that center is forcing things across the country, and I think that's not the case. And it cannot be the case.
Okay, thanks, Mahesh. Sorry, it's Uma. Satish, listening to both these gentlemen here, I think for far too long we've been grappling with this idea, and I take you back to 2007 when these ideas were introduced, and despite our best efforts, we're still discussing the same things on this table and in this room again, right? So, do you have something, some magic formula for this success so that Saurabh can become the Deputy Director General or Director General of India?
सौरभ जी को ब्राइब देना होगा वो मैजिक फार्मूला निकालने के लिए. No, so I think first of all, I think hearing what Saurabh has said and what Umaji have said, and Sanjay, you also had experienced, I think, the tribulations and the challenges that we have encountered. My sense is that, just reiterating, ENS is a relatively simple code. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think we don't have to spend 5-10 years explaining what is there in ECBC, why we should do that, and why. So there has been, I think, there has been some tremendous learning in terms of developing a simple code which would then translate into an easier implementation. I'm not saying easy implementation, but an easier implementation. And the fact that Uma is sitting on this table, I think talking about how do we incorporate ENS or ECBC into the climate smart city assessment framework, which is something that we are working with NIUA, I think it gives me hope that we will not have to wait for another 10 years, I think, until ENS compliance becomes a reality. And I think that is super important, I think, in terms of, because of the challenges, I think, that the planet is facing, the commitments that our Honorable Prime Minister has made, and where it is very clear that he is saying that we have to reduce the intensity by 45% by 2030. It cannot be done if our buildings are not code compliant. I mean, there is no way, I think, we will be able to meet that. It's like I always give this example, कि आप ये बॉटल ले लो, इसमें खूब सारे छेद कर दो और ऊपर से पानी डालते रहो, तो आप रीन्यूएबल एनर्जी से आप पानी डालते रहो और आप एफिशिएंसी किए नहीं, तो ये तो पानी तो लीक कर रहा है, तो आप कितना पानी डालोगे इसके अंदर में. तो I think there are some very commonsensical and simple things that we need to understand. Hopefully, I would say that probably there is more awareness about, I think, why codes are important, and we cannot promise to do bigger things, net zero and others, unless हम लोग code implementation को हम लोग पहले तो fix कर लें. So I think that is one aspect of it where I feel that we will move faster on this thing. The second aspect is, and why we are discussing ENS so, I think, intently in a SHEETAL, under the SHEETAL program. SHEETAL program is about India Cooling Action Plan implementation. India Cooling Action Plan is not a new policy that has been put out. It's an amalgamation of many of the existing policies that different government ministries have. So ICAP implementation cannot happen unless I think B policies are going to get implemented. And that's, I think that's what the beauty of the ICAP is. We have worked hard, I think all of us, in terms of ensuring that I think what ICAP is saying is not anything new. Yes, I mean, it is packaged in a way where I think cooling is the central focus, but it is also keeping the responsibility of some of these implementation with the line ministries. And the core part here is, I think Uma mentioned about these thermal comfort scanners, and I am a big fan of this thing. When I was visiting Kasauli, I had one of these infrared scanners. And while we talk about cooling, I think we also need to be talking about, I think, the buildings that are getting constructed in Shimla and Uttarkashi and all these areas. And if you go and if you take that thermal scanner and if you point in January, you will see that the building surface temperature, inside surface temperature, is 8 degrees, 10 degrees Celsius. If it's 10 degrees Celsius, then your skin temperature is 34 degrees Celsius. There is a delta of 24. It will make you very, very uncomfortable because of the radiation exchange that is taking place. So if those buildings are going to get designed as per ENS requirement, you will have to put insulation at least in the cold climate. You will not be able to design a building without insulation, because I think that becomes a requirement. You can do shading, you can select, I think, a proper glazing, you can have ventilation to meet the RETV requirement, but I think there are certain very basic foundational things that will have to be done correctly if we have to meet the twin objective of designing the building well and ensuring thermal comfort. So I think that these are the two main points that I would say. I think one is the simplicity, one is, I think, the integration with Mahua programs of ENS and ECBC, which is starting to happen. So that gives me hope. The second is that providing thermal comfort for all to a billion people cannot be done without ENS implementation. It's absolutely clear. And I think some of the things that Shatakshi mentioned and Arju mentioned, and I think the larger AEEE team, I know that Terry team is also working on some of these things. The reason I think it can move quickly is because of the experiences that we have had. I think through the ECBC implementation, through the model building code, through I think how city governments need to work or urban and local bodies need to work, whether third-party certification is an option or it will become very expensive. The ease of business aspect I think is important, because हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी भी बोलते हैं कि भाई environmental काम करो but business चलने दो मतलब उस चीज़ को. So I think we need to look at I think all these things, and I'm quite hopeful that I think with I think a consortium of partners with the different ministries, I think coming together on the same platform and working together, I think these things should move rapidly. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Satish. I think you make your points very well. But I think all of us will agree that it's the buildings program which has been supported by so many multilateral, bilateral agencies, and so much of work has been done in terms of material, in terms of toolkits, in terms of guidelines, in terms of type designs, all of those things that we have done, to kind of simplify things and probably scale it up. And also consumer sensitivity, towards sensitizing them towards all of the advantages of all of energy efficient, green, whatever buildings. But despite, ultimately, I think they become the central point for demanding for green and making sure that green is delivered. But despite all of that, it doesn't get delivered. So, to my mind, it's, I think, the consumer which plays the biggest role if you really want the markets to move and scale-ups to happen. How would you work towards this? Your star labeling program for appliances, if you look at the backbone or it has worked only if you have sensitized the consumers, right? You've given them an informed decision-making tool. So how would you probably kind of do the same thing for buildings?
Okay. Buildings is not as appliances is, but because somebody is developing, somebody is purchasing, and someone else as split incentives, we call it as. Now, if we look at the issues, we have plethora of documents, material availability, information, everything is available. But major issue, what I feel, is that number one, we are cost sensitive. And whenever we say that energy efficient building, ENS building, green building, GRIHA rated building, people always say that this will be costlier than the normal building. So that concept, or they should understand that how much cost is increasing and how much I am going to get that return in how much time. It's not completely true. It's not completely true. There are buildings. For example, I always say that Kohinoor Hotel, which we supported in Hyderabad, they have not paid a single extra penny for investment for energy efficient building. But now that was only because they planned accordingly. So what happened there? 3000 TR of air conditioning requirement came down to almost half. And the amount which they saved, they utilized it for something else. So similarly in homes as well, if we are having 1.5 TR air conditioners in every room, that can be replaced by a 0.75 TR if our buildings are designed in good manner. Or maybe we don't need at all. So we would like to have that day that we don't need air conditioning, or if air conditioner is there, it can work on renewable energy. But looking at this time, we can design our buildings in such a way that our total requirement of other loads will come down, so that our total energy cost of construction is at par at least with the non-efficient building. So that kind of thing we have to sensitize people, and that's why we came up with a program called Star Rating of Homes. And in Star Rating of Homes, when this will become popular, people will ask for star rated homes, that I want to live in a star rated home only. So then a day will come when all the registrations will happen along with a star rated certificate. So that kind of sensitization we would like to have, we would like to do to all the consumers, so that demand will be generated from the consumer end, rather than developers or architects driving this. So
many of them are already staying in star-rated homes because of the appliances program that you all have created. So they are all saying, "यहाँ पे star."
But वो घर भी star rated.
So yeah, but I think the point is that we all feel that it is the consumer which is really buying a vehicle. We go and see what is the mileage that it gives in terms of kilometers run per liter. But when it comes to home, we don't care how they are and how much they are really going to consume. So I think it's high time that probably each one of us would need to go out and sensitize people, that start demanding for green. Developers, if their houses are not green or if they are not efficient, don't buy them. They will have nowhere to go, the bubble will burst, and then, Satish ji, you and me will succeed, right? Am I right? So,
I just wanted to add
yeah,
one more
sure,
point
go ahead.
here. How many of you are having a home which is energy efficient? Except one.
नहीं है, अरे,
Okay,
मेरा
two.
तो रेंटल घर है, but
हाँ,
I
but-
think one of the reasons we got was double glazed LED lighting, star rated air conditioners, मतलब उसमें installed थे, तो I
So-
think
so
some
that-
people.
So that's what I am saying, that when we are discussing that how we can have energy efficient homes or green homes, but still, if we are not doing this, we can showcase ourselves first. That let's pledge here that we will make our homes at least energy efficient first.
The reason why they asked me to chair this session is because I have an energy efficient home. Okay, so that's okay. So Mahesh, sorry, do I call you Mahesh or should I call you Uma? I am used to calling you both. So Uma, what I would really want to, and probably this is the last question that I'm going to ask, and thereafter everyone here is itching to ask questions from all of you, the panel people. So, you know, the biggest problem that I have in the portal that you all have created, the CSAF, is that garbage in, garbage out, that we've heard this, and that the reason for connecting with the municipalities and making sure that the right kind of information comes in. How are you kind of ensuring this? Otherwise, you see what is going to happen, whether it is the ICAP or the code implementation or any other program is going to fall flat, right? So, and if I remember when we started discussing when the architecture was being discussed, one of the things that we all said was that we would probably have to sit down with the municipalities, since they did not have the capacities to kind of provide this information, and help them put in the right kind of information. Are you seeing that, or there are still challenges, and how do you kind of overcome that?
What kind of help you need?
It's more than us. I think cities need help. If you look at the last 10, 15 years, we have seen the cities grow, but municipal corporation and their employees have not grown at the similar scale. You know, of course, their revenue has increased. Now they have gone more into a contractual process of letting things out and doing more in PPP. But the total number of employees, whatever the city had in 2001, pretty much most of the cities have similar numbers right now, unless they have been given an additional mandate by the state to take up a new stuff, or they merge departments together. So cities do need a lot of help. One of the things which has worked for us is, if you go and ask for data, definitely there's going to be a lot of questions. There'll be confusions whether it is a valid data or not. This is happening not only with respect to CSEAF, even things like Swachh, things like, other things where they're, 1 year you get city providing 63%, the next year it is 62%. What has happened? Sometimes it is even more than a 1% variation, but we don't need that kind of a data to push a policy or an agenda. What we need is a framework, and what we are currently pushing is, there are certain basic building blocks which cities need to have. They need to have a cell to guide them. If somebody comes and asks a question, they need to have a committee to help them out. And the committee should be comprising of multiple people, not only, municipal commissioner and his engineers, but it should be comprising of the local, architects association or the builders association. So there is a shared ownership and there is a consensus in the decision making. The second or the third thing, there should be a strategy. Every city should have a strategy. Where strategy is not a percentage implementation or a number. Strategy is at least a document which, if the commissioner changes, if the mayor changes, if the leadership changes, if somebody at a local level wants to know what to do, what they can do, the strategy should give them direction. It doesn't need to get into the details of, how many houses they need to change. They can have a vision. All houses need to change at some point or the other. But the strategy should be there. And the third thing is the financial mechanism. Financial mechanism, either there should be a budgetary allocation for monitoring, if at all you're promoting monitoring, or a budgetary allocation for developing an app, or budgetary allocation for implementing it as a part of their online building.
Isn't that a part of the Smart City program? They must have been given.
Smart City program, the budgets are not always dedicated towards the building. Smart City, some are on roads, some are on water supply, some are on providing municipal services, some are on energy efficiency. Of course, some cities have taken it up. But every city has a choice to promote certain things.
No, but holistically, they were supposed to be doing all of these things.
All of these things. Yeah. But if you look at the municipal budget, you will know that most of the cities do not have a budget allocated dedicatedly for it. And once they have these basic building blocks, then you can talk about how many buildings, whether the buildings are good or buildings are bad. So I think right now what ECBC or ENS needs is achieve these first 3 stages. Have a cell, have a committee, have those committees member meet regularly, discuss the policy, develop a strategy, allocate finances, and then we can then push it from the government side. Of course, Saurabhji did mention about bottom up. That is the amazing thing, where you don't need all of these things. All you need is a simple ad which people can understand and people can take it up and start implementing it today if they want to.
Yeah, but I think this bottoms-up approach has been there for donkeys of years now, huh? And Satish, you have also seen that despite the cells, I think, were the cells that they created and the other similar kind of initiatives taken by them.
I think
All-
it's not either or,
all-
it should be both.
Yeah, so they aim, but for how long will you keep hammering? That's the point. Satish, what do you think? For how long? Till 2070? Huh?
I think I don't know. I wish I know a new answer to that question. I think we have to adopt a multi-pronged strategy on this thing. There is a lot of work to be done. We can't sit idle. There is a lot of awareness that has happened, a lot of tools that has come. But rather than, I think, discussing it amongst ourselves, Sanjay ji, I would say
Yeah, so-
that maybe open it up. Anyway, I am a Stepney here, as I said.
No,
मैं
no,
तो
no, no,
last minute पे आया था.
नहीं, नहीं.
So I think let us hear from the, I think the audience, because they may have some ideas and some questions
Okay,
as well.
good. Thank you very much, Satish. And also, in the interest of time, I would like to see a show of hands. Yes, sir, I'll ask you, just one sec, but let me just get an idea as to how many people have questions so that we can time ourselves accordingly. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we'll limit it to 5. Okay, can we have the mics there, please, with you, sir, first? Yes, go ahead and ask. And who is it addressed to? And very, very short question, please. Yeah, it is on, sir. Please go ahead.
So, no, I don't think so. It's on.
We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Prabhat Goel. I've been in the cooling industry for over 40 years, and I have a comment and a question followed by that.
We'll discuss the comment cut. Can we have the question so that,
Okay,
yeah,
the-
that'll
the-
be good.
The question follows the comment because, we've been hearing all along about things that are uncontrollable. And I want to question something that can be controlled. And say, in this country, we have various green building forums today, and we've been giving out gold, silver, platinum, by the dozens. I've lived 30 years in Dubai. It doesn't happen over there. Now, is it possible over here that when we come to silver, gold, platinum buildings, we have proper measurements done and the data is filed and is available for verification? The Prime Minister has said that 2030, we are going to do 30% reduction on energy intensity. On what? On which level? And if you don't see a year-to-year reduction, are you going to wake up in 2030 and say, on what are we going to reduce by 30%?
So,
That's the
thank you,
question.
thank you. Yeah, so when we talk about emission reduction, the intensity reduction, it is over 2005 levels. There is a benchmark to that. And as far as your labeling programs are concerned, or the certification programs for buildings, each one of them have got very robust, measurement tools. These are essentially tools which evaluate. Now, you may or may not agree. That's something which it's your personal choice, but I am also I represent the Griha rating systems as the CEO, and we do this for a living. So we know how much, savings occur. Satish, you want to add something to this?
So Prabhatji, I think the question, suggestion on this thing, and this is probably, I know that B has the star rating program. I know that Climate Smart City Framework is looking, there is a public policy tool called energy disclosure. And I think energy use disclosure, in my opinion, maybe it's 100 kilowatt or more. I think these should go into voluntary phase and should become mandatory. Because the moment people are going to be compelled to disclose how much energy they are consuming, I think there are going to be behavioral changes and there are going to be actions that will be taken. And this is something that you see that if you go to France or Germany or Europe, not only is the building that is on sale, I think there is, but there is a rating which is a verifiable rating that what is the energy efficiency of these homes that is selling. You make it part of the real estate transactions, you say how the changes actually start to come in.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Other people who had their hands, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Mike. You can sit down. Yeah, no problem. Not working. ये वाला mic काम करता है. This one.
आवाज आ रही है.
We have been working on the ECBC compliance for last 2 years with urban local body in Punjab and UP. There is a lot of awareness we have seen in urban local bodies on the ECBC compliance, and some of the states have already started implementing through software. But how, we integrate, if energy efficiency is not an option. So if ECBC is mandatory, how we can integrate that with the RERA Act? Because RERA is another policy tool which is mandating, every developer to register their property and also get it approval at the time of handing over. So it's for the consumer protection. So for the consumer protection, why ECBC cannot be integrated into RERA Act?
Saurabh?
We are actually working on that as well, that it has to be integrated with RERA, especially for the residential sector. So we are working on that.
Thank you, Mayur. I think that was a very good thing, and I think this is probably discussed between the two of you, and that's why you asked, है ना? सब जानता हूँ.
Hello. I had a small question about the sensitization issue, which Saurabh mentioned about. Two questions. One, it's not a question of what you actually making it easy, but what value you are giving. What is in it for me? If you are not giving him what is in it for me, making it easy doesn't make a difference. So I think the presumption that we are making it easy is going to sell it is probably a little bit of a challenge. Second, sorry, if you don't mind. The issue of using the star house may be counterproductive because there is already a star label product. And the comparison between two or the confusion between the two could lead to a problem. Because if you relabel it or reposition it as saying Pyara Ghar, for example, I'm just saying, or Vatavaran Premi Ghar, whatever.
ऑप्शन मत दीजिए इनको, आंसर करने दीजिए.
नहीं, उसके लिए चार्ज ले लेंगे सर, बाद में कोई बात नहीं. But I think removing, relabeling and repositioning it from a value creation perspective rather than easy may be helpful.
चलो प्यारा घर बताइए.
For the first question, actually, what you have said, ease is not for the normal consumer. That is for the developers or architects or the verifiers or the state governments. That how it can be implemented easily. That was the concept behind making that code very simple so that they can, because normal consumer will not implement that. He will demand for that. And that demand will come from the star rating of homes, chahe usko we call it as Pyara Ghar or whatever. But there is another school of thought that when you are branding something new, then also it is difficult. But people understand star rating. So you can encash that as well. So that's why we thought that we will encash star rating of homes rather than a Pyara Ghar.
Oh.
Yeah, they are. We will inform that.
Next, we saw two more hands. These were three. Yeah. खत्म होने वाला है. Can we have the question, please? Introduction and question. अरे बाप रे बाप. हाँ.
Sanjay ji, this is Anurag.
अनुराग, टेढ़ा मेढ़ा नहीं पूछना, जल्दी पूछो.
Thank you so much for accepting the fact that the implementation is almost nil or maybe negligible. But my question is for Uma. Uma, you mentioned the simplified version for the cities. We also have seen how cities work in terms of their priority projects or the agendas. But in terms of their scope, they do not apparently have covered the energy efficiency or the energy by and large in their scope. Mostly, maybe smart cities mission might have the inclusion component, but in terms of the cities, they have their own priorities to deliver or to deal with. How we look at the implementation, which is simplified, no doubt, but in terms of, let's say, apart from the top-down approach, which is in any case going on, how we look at the bottoms-up approach in terms of simplified approach from your perspective? So just to clarify, you're talking about a bottom-up approach or top-down approach? You're talking bottom-up. So, see, definitely cities, it's not that they don't want to implement, but they are stressed in multiple, aspects. One, of course, we all talk about the municipal budget. What about taxation in India? We do have a GST which talks about state and center, but even though we all live in cities, we pay taxes in cities, it's not necessarily comes back to the municipal corporation or the equivalent or a percentage. So that's a larger thing, and I don't want to get into that. But because of it, there is quite a lot of cascading effect which comes into service delivery. And the reverse is much more important. Now, if you look in terms of any house, I would call any house under Rava as a municipal corporation, mini municipal corporation. They have a overhead water tanker, underground water tanker. They have their own energy backup system. They have a diesel generator. They have their own, now sewage treatment is also happening within these bigger societies. And they have their own roads and they maintain everything. So what they are doing is similar to what municipal corporation does at a macro level. So there is a lot which could be done at a bottom-up approach. And the first and foremost, I'll just be quick. It is that whatever we have done so far, why it has not reached people, why people have not started doing it, that means what we have done so far is not worked. We need to change the approach. Change the approach of reaching out to people. Now that is a bigger domain. I think how we go that, we have some ideas, we have some working models, but that has to be looked at, and it has to be also in a language where people can understand. So one unified English or Hindi is not going to work, or one form of communication is not going to work. You make a video or you have a celebrity talking about it in a video or in a DD news, it's not going to work. We have different medias, we have different channels, we have different people. So what we have been doing so far, we need to change the bottom-up approach to create better visibility. And I think that's something is a long debate.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Last question, quickly. We are already overshot.
Yeah.
One, your consortium partner, we will discuss this.
No, I just wanted to check instead of.
Mike.
Okay, I just wanted to check instead of certifying the buildings, what if you certify the builders itself, so that it can be a reference point for me that this particular builder builds.
Oh, we certify the builder itself?
Yeah.
Oh my God. अच्छा, ये तुम बोलिए भाई, आप बताइए. मैं भी नहीं कर रहा इसका.
At least I get an idea. Okay.
I don't know. I think
Everyone
who answers
is
this
scared
question.
of this question.
Yeah.
No, actually, how you will
Knowing
say.
developers, it is very scary. huh?
Okay,
Very much.
I'll give you one example from my own experience. I am having a property in JP, and when I bought that property, everybody said that JP will make very beautiful whatever. And till date, I am struggling to get that property. So if we have certified that property builder, then people will be behind me
I
or
think-
behind bureau.
I think India में ये builder certification is going to be challenging. I think because we do not have very good track record. Maybe I think if the builders do have the track record, then they will exploit it automatically. You don't need to give them a certification. I think we are very good at marketing, so that will happen automatically.
All right. So, thank you very much for those good questions.
Some privilege as consortium partner.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
But Satish is going to clobber me, and I'll hold you responsible.
No, it's fine. I'm a speaker on the next
Yeah,
panel.
okay.
I'll wait. So we've been looking at the multiple technology transitions that are happening from an appliance point of view, right, at CW. So we know refrigerant transition, energy efficiency increases. And a third one that we've come across is the Internet of Things, right? So basically the proliferation of smart appliances is enabling, of course, better servicing and accountability towards the product, but it's also democratizing data. And so when I think about it from a buildings code point of view, like, is that an area where you see this bottom-up and top-down approach being able to come together, but also democratize the consumer in being able to access that data and demand better quality?
Yeah, so, I mean, see, this is exactly what everyone has been doing, right from the time that building codes were introduced. Bottoms up, top down, push, pull, everything has been working. Despite all of that, if you look at the compliance or the footprint, it's a very minuscule amount. And that's the reason why we are having sessions like this again and again. Probably we have very good discussions, but then the outcome of those discussions subsequently, in terms of scaling up, still remains the same. So we need to, obviously, as I say, that in every forum I say that consumers should start demanding green and then only would it be delivered. Otherwise, there is no point discussing all of this. Thank you very much for your attention. I thank the speakers. Unfortunately, Vikas is not there amongst us. He had a medical emergency, so he couldn't be here. But Uma, Mahesh, and Saurabh, Satish has left. Thank you very much for those wonderful comments, and also to the audience for those lovely questions. We can continue to discuss, and I'd like to discuss that star labeling of developers at depth with you. All right? Thank you very much.